Hello and welcome back to Raw Talks with Dr. Cami and Dr. Brandee. Today we have no idea what we're going to talk about. So Dr. Cami is going to do a thing where you just flop open a book, put your finger on, and then we're just going to make a topic out of it, guys. So,
See how this goes. Yeah.
universe is challenging us.
So the book I have is by Rudy. It's Spiritual Cannibalism, which I think is beautiful. All right. Okay. All right. Oh, consciousness.
Oh,
Consciousness of a present situation.
this is actually one of my favorite topics.
Yeah.
Expand consciousness. I think you mentioned it in a couple of our other podcasts, the importance of becoming aware of and living from a conscious state. And so it says specifically consciousness in the current situation,
Present situation.
present situation.
We can
So
just talk about consciousness again. There's so
yeah,
much we didn't
well,
even cover in the last one. So
yeah. So guys, expansion of consciousness, doing things aware. So often um we have abilities, we have passions, we have desires that we hold within ourselves, and they've always been there, but we're not conscious about them. A lot of it is subconscious, and you'll hear people say, "Oh, you've always been that way. Oh, you've always showed that." Sometimes we ourselves aren't aware of it. So sometimes when we're this is what I told. So I teach at the police academy in Utah. And I told the group of one of the groups I just taught is when you need feedback, when you want to become conscious of something, then do a 360 interview. Essentially, you take people that know you and you ask the question, what do you think I'm passionate about? Or in the law enforcement class I was teaching is self-reflection to make sure that you don't lose yourself in the field is what do you notice I'm missing? Or what do you notice that I'm being grumpy about? Or is there something about me changing? And it's hard to do that because that means you're going to get feedback, right? And it's not always pretty feedback. But when you get the feedback, you'll either go, oh, yeah, I have been doing that. Or, oh, yeah, I have always liked that. So what it's doing is it's changing your mind from being working subconsciously to being more aware consciously and living more aware.
yeah, I like ignorance to awareness, because it's not a negative thing to be ignorant of things. I was just thinking about this the other day too, about noticing these flash thoughts that I have sometimes
Mm-hmm.
and going, oh, because I don't notice that they're coming, like bringing awareness around them. Like, well, it doesn't matter what I want. It does matter because I've got little kids and I've got like, there's a lot of other things that take priority. But my
Yeah.
natural like thought process is, well, it doesn't matter what I want. So when I start to hear that, I can go, oh, that's not true. That's weird. Like it doesn't, it's not something that I would consciously think that I'm bringing into my life. Um, so it's like these little micro things of like, well, why does this have to be so hard all the time? Like that kind of thing. Like, oh, this is so hard all the time. And it's not something that I'm consciously bringing up. It's just, it pops into my brain. And when I start bringing awareness around that, I can go, okay, like, how do we manipulate that then? So my question would be to you. So if I have this thought, like there's aspects of my business that are easy and things that are hard. And some things I'm delegating this. This is so hard. I just don't want to do it. But if that comes up, like, why is this always so difficult? Why is bedtime with my kids? Why is bedtime always so hard? Well, we talked about how the universe is a mirror, our reality is a mirror. So if I'm unconsciously feeling like this is difficult, what tools do you have, or how do I start shifting that to go, okay, this is without the BS, because our brain is a big BS detector, right? I can't go too far out of my imagination to say, well, this is easy, even though it's clearly not being easy in the moment. So do you have any suggestions on that?
Yeah, it really mindset is such a big deal. It really is. And the stories we tell ourselves. So we talked about this in one of the podcasts, I don't know which one, but I said, self-observation is the greatest way to change. And you used a different word, but pretty much the same concept. And if you remember, please bring it up. But so I'm gonna start with a little story and then come back up to your question. So I was driving one day and I had a client who just paid me some cash. I was like, woohoo, I got cash in my pocket. And then I'm pulling up to, I remember the light, because I was driving on the freeway, the light I pulled up to, I know exactly which one I pulled up to, and my thought, of course I have to pay my mom money. I just got cash and of course I have to pay. And in that moment I paused and I did a self-observation. And I said, wait a minute, it's a blessing. Because if not, I would have had to go to the bank, get some cash out anyway and pay my mom. So instead, I was able to, a client paid me cash that prevented me from going to the bank, saved me more time, and then I was able to give it to her. So I essentially said, oh, I don't want to think that way anymore. It's thank you. Thank you for having this happen because it saved me time. So you'll hear people say, of course that happens to me. Of course that's going to happen. Or this is so hard because we are overwhelmed, or maybe we're frustrated, or maybe we're tired. So I think self-observation, this is would be one tool I would give is the self-observation is, what is the story I'm telling myself and can I change that story? Is it a true story? So when you're getting your kids ready for bed, I'm as being a parent myself, I've started doing this myself where before I'm like, okay, they're fighting me to get to bed. And now I do this thing where I just take a deep breath and I just watch my kids and I just observe them. And I tell myself what a beautiful experience it is to watch my child be independent, to watch them formulate a thought, to find solutions with them themselves. So I took off the pressure of it all being on me, being the bad mom because I'm making you go to bed and then they don't want to go to bed, to really sitting and asking where they are, right? So I changed my story to, this is a beautiful opportunity for me to experience my children, even if it's hard, right? So the other day, my youngest son, we were walking at this bird preserve place and we were reading signs along the way about what the birds are and how often they migrate to this area. And so I have two kids close together, 6 and 7-year-old, my youngest set of kids. And for those of you who don't know, I have 8 kids, so I have a lot of kids. So these are my 2 younger ones. And so it's just me and my husband and my 2 younger kids, and we're walking and I'm reading to my 7-year-old the facts about the birds. And my other son kept like putting his hand in the way, kept putting his hand in the way. And my husband's like, stop doing that. It's not respectful. So he kept doing it, kept doing it. So my husband pulled him aside and was like, listen, that's very disrespectful. Don't do that. I've asked you multiple times. So I finished reading and then I paused for a minute and I just became the observer, because I could have said, this is so difficult when he's in a bad mood or when he's in this stubbornness state, Of course, this is how it's going to be. But instead, I was like just the observer and I watched my son and something popped in, because when you just pause and you become the observer of the own story or the stories that are happening, then clarity really drops in. So I paused. I looked at my son and I became the observer. And I said, just out of nowhere, I said, are you jealous? Now he's 6 years old. Apparently he knows what jealousy means because he says yes. But I said, why are you jealous? Are you jealous because I'm reading to your brother and not to you? And he goes, yes, it makes me really sad. So then I said to him, I said, it's okay to be jealous, honey, because it teaches you that you desire something. But you're the one that has to choose to ask or say what you need. So you say, Mom, I'm jealous because you're reading to brother. Will you also read to me? Right. And so we kind of, through the rest of the walk, I was just planting those seeds and he was able to find his own solution. So we all get stuck in these moments of emotion, like, or this is frustrating, but we never pause to consciously ask why.
Yeah.
So I would say from my perspective is pause, be your own observer and ask why. Can you change your perspective? Sometimes you might not, sometimes you are frustrated, but there's always a solution. And there's 2 guarantees in life. Same thing I teach cadets. There's 2 guarantees. Everything's temporary. Maybe there's more. Everything's temporary. There's always change, and death is guaranteed. Right?
Yeah.
So if you can pause and look at your story and make a decision, can I either accept this, change it, or leave it? Those are the only options.
I like that. Yeah.
And then there's always a solution. You accept, try to change, or leave.
Oh, I
That's
love that. Yeah, as you were talking, it was making me laugh a little bit because there's a few things. I think that we tend towards negative. It's
Mhm.
easy small talk, right? So, especially as parents, oh, I'm so tired. Everything's hard. It's hard, it's hard, it's hard. And it's small talk, but it's not like fire, passion aspects of small talk. Um, I tend to try to, how can I make this playful? Is
Yeah.
my go-to. The question I ask myself is, how can I make this playful, especially with the kids? Sometimes I'm terrible at it. Sometimes I want the control
Mhm.
piece. And that's, we want control over things. We just do. It's just part of who we are as humans. And so the other night, um, my husband was trying to read to the kids and they were jumping all over the place. And I was like, sit still. And I have a 7-year-old also, actually our kids are pretty close in age. And
Yeah.
she was just jumping around and getting the other ones riled up. And I was like, dude, I was getting so frustrated. And he is so good. We're very good partners where he just closes the book and he's like, you know what? You guys need to go. We need to make them run. So we were in our bed and he goes, okay, run down to the end of the hallway, touch that and, jump like frogs all the way down and come back and like give me a high five and all that. And so all three of them go off running and him and I just laid in bed snuggling and they came back, they high five us and, okay, now do it this way, now do it this way until they were like exhausted. And I would
Yeah.
have just been like, because then I was stuck in my mindset of like, no, I want this control. Like you will listen to me and just, I'm like, and it wasn't even like, I was bothered that they weren't following orders versus that they were, I don't know how to explain it, that they were jumping around. And he's like, but you're asking them to stop jumping around. I was like, I don't, but it's interesting to look at it. I like the way you said that. It's like there's a solution, walk away, or I forget what the other one was now. Say it again. The three.
Either accept the situation,
Set.
change it, or leave.
Check.
So
Okay. Yeah.
in your situation, you guys accepted that they just have all this energy. So you
Mm-hmm.
change the dynamic. So you kind of use a combination of it. You change the dynamic by realizing, oh, I want control, but I had to first accept. Now I can change, influence it by saying, go run up and down the thing,
Yeah.
the hallway. And I don't know if you went back and finished reading, but if you did, then you still got to your end goal.
Yeah, we did. We went back to reading and finishing the book. But it's interesting because looking at it now from the outside and the retrospective aspect of it, it's like, yeah, that follows the flow of all things. Like there's action, there's input of learning and tools and stuff like that. And then there's output where I'm actively doing something and making something. And then there's that friction piece that always happens in that where you just like can't do anymore and you just have to walk away and do something completely different to reset the system
Yeah.
to get the next action step. So it all
Yeah.
applies. Yeah.
I like that. That's really nice too. Um, I like the going back to becoming the observer, because if you become the observer of these options, how you said it, the input, the output, or the changing of the cycle, or accepting, changing, or letting go, right? To be an observer looking at it, can we bring playfulness into it more? And I think one question I like to ask myself, and I tell a lot of my clients who are our parents is, why is it really that important to me that it makes me upset? Right? Like you said, is it because of the control and we have this thing as they have to listen and respect? And then I tell parents all the time, I'm like, I kind of start being a smartass a little bit. I'll say something like, oh yeah, because we understand that a 6-year-old's brain's not developed completely yet, but we have this expectation that they're going to understand what we're asking as if it already is developed.
Mhm.
Like, oh, right. So if you ask them to go clean their room and they do it for a second, they go somewhere else. I mean, they're still learning how to use their frontal lobes. That's not even where the decisions and right. That's where the decisions and executive functioning is. But then we have this expectation that they're in their 30s or they're like, what mid-20s when I say our brains never stop growing, but it becomes more finite around 20, 26 for men and 23, I think, for women, or is it 26 for men and 28 for women? I don't remember. women,
it's interesting.
women's brains develop faster than boys. So I think it's 26 for women and 28 for men. But research also shows that our brains are very have a lot of
Yeah.
elasticity, and they can continue to grow and expand, because I always laugh. Research shows that we get 70,000, between 60 and 70,000 thoughts a day. And I'm sure that changes. And 40,000 of them are negative. So this self-observation is essential to make sure that you're not letting the negative thought forms or the negative patterns dictate how you're living your life. It's like spilt milk when someone flips out over spilt milk when it's just milk.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you have a toddler who's trying to pour and be all independent, like how do we look at it and go, oh, it's so cute, they're trying to be independent, let's clean this mess up together, versus having this meltdown that a 3-year-old should pour the milk perfectly or tie their shoes when they never learned how to tie their shoes, you know.
And that applies to self-awareness as well. Like all skills and mastery of skills, they go through areas of friction. So you're going to fail and you're going to fall back into habits and you're going to make mistakes. But when your overarching goal is that self-improvement and that change, you give yourself some grace and some and some love that that improvement will happen because that's what you want. That's the desire, you know. But like when you're learning to play the guitar, you're not going to just like right away. It's gonna take time and practice. And so all aspects of it need to be applied.
So being conscious means being aware, so that you're consciously using your skills, consciously being aware of what works and what doesn't work. When I teach in my classes, I teach a intuitive mentorship class, and I tell them my goal with you is to expand your consciousness, where you realize that all the abilities, your strengths, you've already known you've had, but you're going to do it consciously, right?
Yeah.
Being aware of. So
Making choices consciously too, you know, and that's just, I think when we talked about unconditional love, and I call it conscious love, and making conscious choices.
yeah,
You know, I'm choosing to eat ice cream tonight because I like it and I'm
right.
going to enjoy it. And if I don't feel good afterwards, then I'm going to choose to take that yuck feeling as a learning experience and not shame, blame, and pain.
Yeah.
Because, and you're consciously saying no too. You have won't power just as much as you have willpower.
Yeah.
You know, you have those choices. And when you're making a conscious choice, it's like empowering with that. And
Yeah.
you're making conscious choices when you are expanding that love and compassion outward too. Like we start inward and then we move outward. And that's like just the way of maturation. I mean, you look at little kids, they don't always get what they want. Like, you know, you can't have sugar for breakfast. I know I'm a terrible mom, but you can't. And then you get into your like early 20s, late teens, where you leave the house and then you're like self-indulgent. I can do whatever I want. And you see this like, you know, because we've all done that. And then after that, you realize, and this was with COVID too, we realized that sitting on our couches and self-indulging and the things that we were just so desperate for because we're burnt out from demands, that, oh, this isn't satisfactory, this isn't self-fulfilling. And then you shift into like this outward expansion and an outward look for life. And that's where you start to maybe want a family, or, you know, do volunteer work, or you're putting your focus outward. And so it works the same way. As you start, your process is intentional inward and self-improvement, because the more you realize that you accept your story, you accept you can accept others, and then you shift that outward focus. And I think that this is really a cool transition for consciousness as a life form.
Yeah.
Is that you know, Stephen Kotler, I'm such a fangirl. He's one of my favorites. And if you haven't read Last Tango in Cyberspace, it's epic. I'm on the second book right now, but he talks about this empathy, this cross-species empathy aspect, and how consciousness it's turtles all the way down. So if animals, because then you shift to like, do animals have consciousness? They have personality, they have awareness of their needs, you know. So then, okay, so in the book, animals have they've concluded animals have consciousness to a degree where they've earned rights, right?
Yeah.
And so most anything is like lab grown meat and different things. It's like that's where you are. But animals have a right, so we don't mess with them the way we do now. But then you go the next step further and you go, well, trees have a neural network and they have a communication. They send each other nutrients. They can tell when one's sick or when one, you know, they send their young different things. And so is that consciousness? Do they have consciousness? And in that aspect, it's turtles all the way down, where like, does a bacteria in your gut have consciousness? Because they're life forms. And it's a very interesting topic that we don't know. We have ideas and we can only talk about how it influences our own personal growth and our own enjoyment of life, so that suffering is part of life. It's inevitable. We all are going to move through anxiety and fear and things. Tragedy is part of human life. But when you have self-awareness and you have self-acceptance and conscious love, then it makes it all a little bit more tolerable and makes life, the beautiful aspects of life, come to flower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say some would argue that a tree, an animal, they have conscious, but they subconsciously move naturally with the process. There's not an awareness behind it like humans would have. Like we have an awareness where we can say, I love you. Awareness to say no. Maybe that's actually hindering. Where like a tree is like, it's just natural. I'm aware and they're conscious enough to send the nutrients, conscious enough to do these things, but there's a different level of the awarenessness. So I don't know. That's a good question. Um, but I do think it's a blessing that we have a consciousness, and if we can get it to where we're aware of our thoughts, our feelings, then we can take the actual steps to enjoy our life without the subconscious controlling.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I would say with my brain wants to go to so many different things just because of, like you brought up COVID, and I love the idea of the middle pillar, right? There's this middle pillar of, you talked about, everyone is desperate for just resting because they were burnt out and then they got to COVID. And so so the middle pillar would be balance, right? That would be the balance of work, life, home, balance. Where before COVID is like we're on one end of the extreme where we're overworking, working 80 hours, and then during COVID, not working. And so each of these aren't healthy because there's not a balance. And now we're kind of swinging the pendulum back to the pre-COVID, where we are going back to the subconscious way of living, working, 60 hours a week, whatever hours a week, society decides, oh, we're just going to raise rent and everyone just follows, food is doubling, all this stuff is doubling. People are getting more burnt out again. So being conscious, coming to the middle pillar would be enough's enough. What does balance look like? This, we need to work, but we also can't just be doing nothing. So there is the middle pillar. And I do think the world is working on consciously understanding that. How do we take these extremities of everything, politics, relationships, work, not work, and find the middle pillar? And what you said is you got to start in your home. You got to start within yourself, understanding what your middle pillar is and being consciously aware of your choices. And the only way to do that is to pause and ask, why? Why am I thinking that? Where is that coming from? Am I okay with that? It's like people my whole life have told me, you work so hard, you're like superwoman. Um, or I feel so bad for you because you work so much. And I finally just sat there and thought, why does it bother me when people tell me that? You know, and by being aware of myself, I was like, because this is me. I like to work. I like to have multiple projects. I like to be active. I like to be a mom. I like to be a wife. I like to own a company. I like to live. I'm choosing to live the way I want to. So don't feel bad for me because I'm consciously okay with this. Now, if I was subconsciously running myself into the ground and someone said that, then it would be important for me to go, well, why am I running? Which I had to do. like, find that middle pillar between running myself so much in the ground that I'm exhausted all the time and can't be a mom type of thing, versus going, no, what is my balance? Working, creating, and mothering, being a wife, like what is the balance? And only you get to decide that. And that's what conscious living is about, is asking the why, being the self-observer, and not doing things subconsciously. Because how often do we subconsciously sabotage ourselves? You're so burnt out at work that you get fired and then you blame them. But the fact is you were really tired and didn't want to work there anyway. So you made it happen. You're miserable in a relationship. You don't address it. So you subconsciously destroy it. And then you blame the other person versus going, wait, this is what I wanted in the first place. So the only way out is, for me, is self-observation. And then of course doing something like you said. The input is, okay, I gotta observe. Okay, what actual steps do I want to take and what do I want to change? I think that's how you said it. Right. I know we need to wrap up. So what else would you add to that?
Um, I do think that the only thing that's coming to me is active recovery. I don't think that that's addressed enough. I think we go, go, go. Even with the input, there's passive, there's active, and we're stuck in that. Like for me, I have a podcast on, I'm reading so many darn books, but I will finish books. There's a dedication when you finish a book. Like it's hard to do. There's always this. And so sometimes I have to say, I will not put on any education today. Like I'm not taking in any education, and I am not creating anything unless there's a fuel of
Yeah.
intrinsic motivation, not like I need to do a newsletter, like I haven't done one for a week, or like that pressure. I will actively say, I'm not doing anything today. Sometimes I like to do goals of like, I'm not going to do sugar for till my birthday, which is in a couple weeks. And I was like, how about I just don't do today? Because I've been really craving sugar. So I'm like, I'm just making smaller parameters, but I'm not doing this for today. I'm going to be completely here doing nothing. And an active recovery means saunas, acupuncture, massage, meditation, those things that actually just like calm down your nervous system, and they give your body a break and your brain a break. And that's as easy as going on YouTube and watching and like doing a small meditation or a guided meditation or a guided yoga or whatever. And I think that that's really important, because as we're talking about things, I know how many plates I have in the air that are full and spinning. And it's like, okay, I don't know where to lose some, like, where am I supposed to fit something in here? Like, I love all the things that I'm doing as well, but what if I hated them? What if I hated my job and I was stressed out? I'm working like 50, 60 hours a week or more. I still have kids at home. Like, there's a lot going on. Where do you find that's finite time for yourself? Take a shower, make a parameter of nothing comes in or out in the next 20 minutes. I mean, that's kind of what you need to do, I think, sometimes.
That's
making those conscious choices of,
yeah. So I would say your homework assignment, if you want to have it, would be to start to self-observe and ask what you're consciously doing. If you don't, ask why, because a lot of this will break up patterns. It will help you, come to those three. What I would say, accept it, change it, or leave it. And what Dr. Cami would say is, would you say input, output?
Yeah, input, output, and then nothingness, just surrender. But I will add too, because we got to get better at this, you and I, is, I do coaching. Brandee does coaching as well. And so if you're kind of like, okay, that sounds great, but I don't know how to do this on my own, just check out the show notes. We'll have our contacts, our business info on there, so you can reach out and work with us specifically one-on-one or even in groups sometimes, just to get started. Sometimes it's nice to have someone just like, here is all my stuff.
Yeah.
Help me figure out where I'm supposed to start with this. And then implementing the tools that we need, that's subjective, and we'll work with that too. So,
yep. And it's, make sure you send that to me and we'll get that on there for you guys every time.
yeah.
If you like today's discussion and you feel like someone can benefit, please like, subscribe, and share. We will be working on getting on Spotify soon, I believe, but right now just YouTube. So please don't be afraid. We enjoy you guys, and we'll have another one out hopefully next week. So enjoy your week.